Hello, lovely squirrels. I'm on the phone again, so you'll see the ring light. I'm sorry about that, but I'm just scared to use the Chromebook for anything but live. So here we go. Chapter 17, The Weeks Wear By, and I apologize for not reading to y'all yesterday. I can't remember if I did and it lost it again. I think I just totally didn't do it. So, we'll see. I might read two. We'll see how long they are. Again, chapter 17, The Weeks Wear By. Rilla read her first love letter in her Rainbow Valley first-shadowed nook. And a girl's first love letter, whatever blasé older people may think of it, is an event of tremendous importance in the teens. After Kenneth's regiment had left Kingsport, there came a fortnight of dully aching anxiety. And when the congregation sang in church on Sunday evenings, "Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea." That's one of my favorite hymns. Rilla's voice almost failed her, for with the words came a horribly vivid mind picture of a submarine ship sinking beneath pitiless waves amid the struggles and cries. Oh no. My picture went away. Doggone it. Like Mama said, if it ain't one thing, it's 10. Here we go. Struggles and cries of drowning men. Then word came that Kenneth's regiment had arrived safely in England, and now at last here was his letter. It began with something that made Rilla supremely happy for the moment, and ended with a paragraph that crimsoned her cheeks with the wonder and thrill and delight of it. Between beginning and ending, the letter was just such a jolly, newsy epistle as Ken might have written to anyone, but for the sake of that beginning and ending, Rilla slept with the letter under her pillow for weeks, sometimes waking in the night to slip her fingers under and just touch it, and looked with secret pity on other girls whose sweethearts could never have written them anything half so wonderful and exquisite. Kenneth was not the son of a famous novelist for nothing. He had a way of expressing things in a few poignant, significant words that seemed to suggest far more than they uttered, and never grew stale or flat or foolish with ever so many scores of readings. Rilla went home from Rainbow Valley as if she flew rather than walked, but such moments of uplift were rare that autumn. To be sure, there was one day in September when great news came of a big Allied victory in the West, and Susan ran out to hoist the flag, the first time she had hoisted it since the Russian line broke, and the last time she was to hoist it for many dismal moons. "Likely the big push has begun at last, Mrs. Dr. dear," she exclaimed, "and we will soon see the finish of the Huns. Our boys will be home by Christmas now. Hurrah!" Susan was ashamed of herself for hurrahing the minute she had done it, and apologized meekly for such an outburst of juvenility. "But indeed, Mrs. Dr. dear, this good news has gone to my head after this awful summer of Russian slumps and Gallipoli setbacks." "Good news," said Miss Oliver bitterly. "I wonder if the women whose men have been killed for it will call it good news. Just because our own men are not on that part of the front, we are rejoicing as if the victory had cost no lives." "Now, Miss Oliver, dear, do not take that view of it," deprecated Susan. We've not had much to rejoice over of late, and yet men were being killed just the same. Do not let yourself slump like poor Cousin Sophia. She said when the word came, it is nothing but a rift in the clouds. We are up this week, but we will be down the next." "Well, Sophia Crawford," said I. For I will never give in to her, Mrs. Dr. dear. God himself cannot make two hills without a hollow between them, as I have heard it said. But that is no reason why we should not take the good of the hills when we are on them. But Susan Sophia moaned on. Here is the Gallipoli expedition a failure, and the Grand Duke Nicholas sent off, and everyone knows the Tsar of Russia is a that's how it's spelled, is a pro-German, and the Allies have no ammunition, and Bulgaria is going against us, and the end is not yet, for England and France must be punished for their deadly sins until they repent in sackcloth and ashes. I think myself, I said, that they will do their repenting in khaki and trench mud, and it seems to me that the Huns should have a few sins to repent of also. They're instruments in the hands of the Almighty to purge the garners, said Sophia. And then I got mad, Mrs. Dr. dear, and I told her I did not and would never believe that the Almighty ever took such dirty instruments in hand for any purpose whatsoever, and that I did not consider it decent for her to be using the words of Holy Writ as glibly as she was doing in ordinary conversation. She was not, I told her, a minister or even an elder, and for the time being I squelched her. Mrs. Dr. dear, Cousin Sophia has no spirit. She is very different from her niece, Mrs. Dean Crawford, over harbor. You know the Dean Crawfords had 5 boys, and now the new baby is another boy. All the connection, and especially Dean Crawford, was more disappointed because their hearts had been set on a girl. But Mrs. Dean just laughed and said, everywhere I went this summer I saw the sign, Men Wanted, staring me in the face. Do you think I could go and have a girl under such circumstances? There's spirit for you, Mrs. Dr. dear, but Cousin Sophia would say the child was just so much more cannon fodder. Cousin Sophia had full range for her pessimism that gloomy autumn, and even Susan, incorrigible old optimist as she was hard put to it for cheer. When Bulgaria lined up with Germany, Susan only remarked scornfully, one more nation anxious for a licking. But the Greek tangle worried her beyond her powers of philosophy to endure calmly. Constantine of Greece has a German wife, said Mrs. Dr. dear, and that fact squelches hope. To think I should have lived to care what kind of wife Constantine of Greece had. The miserable creature is under his wife's thumb, and that's a bad place for any man to be. I'm an old maid, and an old maid has to be independent or she will be squashed out. But if I had been a married woman, Mrs. Dr. dear, I would have been meek and humble. It's my opinion that this Sophia of Grace is a minx. Susan was furious when the news came that Venezuela had met with defeat. I could spank Constantine and skin him alive afterwards, that I could, she exclaimed bitterly. Oh, Susan, I'm surprised at you, said the doctor, pulling a long face. Have you no regard for the property? Skin him alive by all means, but omit the spanking. If he had been well spanked in his younger days, he might have more sense now, retorted Susan. But I suppose princes are never spanked, but this is the pity. I saw the Allies have sent him an ultimatum. I could tell them that it will take more ultimatums to skin a snake like Constantine. Perhaps the Allied blockade will hammer sense into his head, but that will take some time, I'm thinking. And in the meantime, what's to become of poor Serbia? They saw what became of Serbia, and during the process, Susan was hardly to be lived with. In her exasperation, she she abused everything and everybody except Kitchener, and she fell upon poor President Wilson tooth and claw. She's never had any love for him. If he had done his duty and gone into the war long ago, we should not have seen this mess in Serbia, she avowed. It would be a serious thing to plunge a great country like the U.S. with its mixed population into the war, Susan, said the doctor, who sometimes came to the defense of the president, not because he thought Wilson needed it especially, but from an unholy love of baiting Susan. Maybe, Doctor dear, maybe, but that makes me think of the old story of the girl who told her grandmother she was going to be married. It's a solemn thing to be married, and the old lady, yes, but it is a solemner thing not to be, said the girl, and I can testify to that out of my own experience, Doctor dear, and I think it is a solemner thing for the Yankees that they have been kept out of war than it would have been if they had gone into it. However, though I do not know much about them, I am of the opinion that we will see them starting something yet. Woodrow Wilson or no Woodrow Wilson, when they get it into their heads that this war is not a correspondence school, they will not, said Susan, energetically waving a saucepan with one hand and a spoon ladle with the other, be too proud to fight then. On a pale yellow windy evening in October, Carl Meredith went away. He had enlisted on his 18th birthday. John Meredith saw him off with a set face. His two boys were gone. There was only little Bruce left now. He loved Bruce, and Bruce's mother dearly. But Jerry and Carl were the sons of the bride of his youth, and Carl was the only one of his children who had been Cecilia's very eyes. As they looked longingly out at him and above As they looked lovingly out at him above Carl's uniform, the pale minister suddenly remembered the day when, for the first and last time, he had tried to whip Carl for his prank with the eel. That was the first time he had realized how much Carl's eyes were like Cecilia's. Now he realized it again once more. Would he ever see his dead wife's eyes looking at him from his son's face? What a bonny, clean, handsome lad he was. It was hard to see him go. John Meredith seemed to be looking at a torn plain strewed with the bodies of able-bodied men between the ages of 18 and 45. Only the other day, Carl had been a little scrap of a boy hunting bugs in Rainbow Valley, taking lizards to bed with him and scandalizing the Glen by carrying frogs to Sunday school. It seemed hardly right, somehow, that he should be an able-bodied man in khaki. Yet John Meredith had said no words to dissuade him when Carl had told him he must go. Rilla felt Carl's going keenly. They had always been cronies and playmates. He was only a little older than she was, and they had been children in Rainbow Valley together. She recalled all their old pranks and escapades as she walked slowly home alone. The full moon peeped through the scudding clouds with sudden floods of weird illumination. The telephone wires sang a shrill, weird song in the wind, and the tall spikes of weathered, gray-headed goldenrod in the fence corners swayed and beckoned wildly to her like groups of old witches weaving unholy spells. On such a night as this long ago, Carl would have come over to Ingleside and whistled her out to the gate. "Let's go on a moonlight spree, Rilla," he would say. Yes, golden moonlight spree, would say. And the two of them would scamper off to Rainbow Valley. Rilla had never been afraid of his beetles and bugs, though she drew a hard and fast line at snakes. They used to talk together of almost anything. Where am I? Almost anything. And were teased about each other at school. But one evening when they were about 10 years of age, they had solemnly promised by the old spring in Rainbow Valley that they would never marry each other. Alice Clow had crossed out their names on their slate in school that day, and it came out that both married. They did not like the idea at all, hence the mutual vow in Rainbow Valley. There was nothing like an ounce of prevention. Rilla laughed over the old memory and then sighed. This was that very day a dispatch from some London paper had contained a cheerful announcement that the present moment is the darkest since the war began. Cheerful? It was dark enough, and Rilla wished desperately that she could do something besides waiting and serving at home. As day after day, the Glen boys she had known went away. If she were only a boy speeding in khaki by Carl's side to the Western Front, she had wished, She had wished that in a burst of romance when Jim had gone without perhaps really meaning it, she meant it now. There were moments when waiting at home in safety and comfort seemed an unendurable thing. The moon burst triumphantly through an especially dark cloud, and shadow and silver chased each other in waves over the glen. Rilla remembered one moonlit evening of childhood when she had said to her mother, "The moon looks like a sorry, sorry face." She thought it looked like that still. An agonized, Lord. An agonized, careworn face, as though it looked down on dreadful sights. What did it see on the Western Front, in broken Serbia, on shell-swept Gallipoli? I guess I'm saying it right. Gallipoli. "I am tired," Miss Oliver had said that day in a rare outburst of impatience, "of this horrible rack of strained emotions, when every day brings a new horror or the dread of it. No, don't look reproachfully at me, Mrs. Blythe. There's nothing heroic about me today. I've slumped. I wish England had Belgium to her fate. I wish Canada had never sent a man. And I wished we'd tied our boys to our apron strings and not let one of them go. Oh, I shall be ashamed of myself in half an hour." Oh, Lord, where am I now? I'm sorry, I'm sleepy. Bang. Half an hour. "But at this very minute, I mean every word of it, will the Allies never strike? Patience is a tired mare, but she jogs on," said Susan. "While the steeds of Armageddon thunder trampling over our hearts," retorted Miss Oliver. "Susan, tell me, didn't you ever take spells of feeling that you must scream or swear or smash something? Just because your torture reaches a point when it becomes unbearable? I have never sworn or desired to swear, Miss Oliver dear, but I will admit," said Susan, with the air of one determined to make a clean breast of it once and for all, "that I have experienced occasions when it was relief to do considerable banging. Don't you think that's kind of swearing, Susan? What's the difference between slamming a door viciously and saying the D word? Miss Oliver, dear, interrupted Susan, desperately determined to save Gertrude from herself. If human power could do it, you are all tired out and unstrung, and no wonder teaching these obstreperous, don't know, youngsters all day and coming home to bad war news. But just you go upstairs and lie down, and I will bring you up a cup of hot tea and a bite of toast, and very soon you will not want to slam doors or swear. Susan, you're a good soul, a very pearl of Susans. But Susan, it would be such a relief to say just one soft, low, little, tiny, starting to say, damn. I will bring you a hot water bottle for the soles of your feet also, interposed Susan resolutely, and it would not be any relief to say the word you're thinking of, Miss Oliver, and that you may tie to. Well, I'll try the hot water bottle first, said Miss Oliver, repenting herself on teasing Susan and vanishing upstairs. To Susan's intense relief, Susan shook her head ominously as she filled the water bottle. The war was certainly relaxing the standards of behavior woefully. Here was Miss Oliver admittedly on the point of profanity. We must draw the blood from her brain, said Susan, and if this bottle is not effective, I will see what can be done with a mustard plaster. Gertrude rallied and carried on. Lord Kitchener went to Greece, whereat Susan foretold that Constantine would soon experience a change of heart. Lloyd George began to heckle the Allies regarding equipment and guns, and Susan said you would hear more of Lloyd George yet. Not Georgette, but George. Dang, what was I saying? Georgette. Oh, mercy, y'all. The gallant Anzacs withdrew from Gallipoli, whatever it is, and Susan approved the step with reservations. The siege of Kut el Amara began, and Susan pored over maps of Mesopotamia and abused the Turks. Henry Ford started for Europe, and Susan flayed him with sarcasm. Sir John French was superseded by Sir Douglas Haig, and Susan dubiously opined that it was poor policy to swap horses crossing a stream, though to be sure Haig was a good name, and French had a foreign sound, say what you might. Not a move on the great chessboard of king or bishop or pawn escaped Susan, who had once read only Glen St. Mary notes. There was a time, she said sorrowfully, when I did not care what happened outside of P.E. Island, and now a king cannot have a toothache in Russia or China, but it worries me. It may be broadening to the mind, as the doctor said, but it's very painful to the feelings. When Christmas came again, Susan did not set any vacant place at the festive board. 2 empty chairs were too much even for Susan, who had thought in September that there would not be one. This is the first Christmas that Walter was not home, Rilla wrote in her diary that night. Jim used to be away for Christmases up in Avonlea, but Walter never was. I had letters from Ken and him today. They're still in England, but expect to be in the trenches very soon. And then, still in England, but expect to be in the trenches very soon. And then, but I suppose we'll be able to endure it somehow. To me, the strangest of all the strange things since 1914 is how we have all learned to accept things we never thought we could. To go on with life as a martyr, of course. I know that Jim and Jerry are in the trenches and Ken and Walter will be soon. Dang, this chapter goes on forever. Y'all, I was going to read 2, but I think I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to be asleep. Sorry. Whoa. Dang. Now I think I'm lost. Excuse me, hang on. Okay, that Kim and Walter will be soon. Hang on. I know that Jim and Jerry are in the trenches, that Ken and Walter will be soon, that if one of them does not come back, my heart will break, yet I will go on and work and plan. Yes, and even enjoy life by times. And I'll stop her right there. So we've got a part 1 in chapter 17. I'm so sorry. Long chapters about war bore me. I know they shouldn't, but... Okay, y'all be sweet. Don't be ugly. Found my sign. It was down behind everything. And I will hope to see y'all tomorrow again for tea at 3 with me. See you later. Love you bunches. Bye-bye.